here to talk about trannies.
Don't say that, Susie. Don't call them that because that's what's causing the problem. They think that that's what they are. They're establishing a self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
They're establishing a gender that they've chosen as an identity. And they're establishing an identity of someone who was mistakenly created under defect. They're accepting the premise that the only way for them to be happy or to be right is to mutilate their bodies indefinitely and permanently, which we all know ultimately they change their mind. It's not like a tattoo or a piercing,
Right.
that you can remove or that doesn't affect your health. Some of the things that happen to these people are atrocious. It's hard to read some of the testimonies of the people that have undergone gender transition and been castrated and realize after it's gone that it's never really gone, and then describe what happens in the morning when they're still having the same physical sensations and reactions that they had before they were castrated, just part of them is missing. And then conversely, people who have attempted to create female organs and the infections and the issues that come from that, we start talking about the business and the big bucks in genital mutilation.
Yes, in the population control. You don't think that it has to play into that, like big pharma getting rich off of it? Yes, but also
No, not unless you're talking about from a spiritual perspective. Satan wants people spiritually and physically dead. He wants them spiritually dead before they're physically dead, because then they're in eternity. They've been separated from God completely. So he doesn't gain anything from killing a Christian physically. Heaven gains an angel. But he does want to separate them from God, and he does want to slow them down and stop them from spreading the gospel and leading others to Christ. So in California, they were trying to do some of this stuff, but our Constitution and work that's been done by organizations like the American Principles Project and other organizations that are committed to saving the lives of children from predatory organizations and agencies and movements and teachers and education systems. California was trying to make it essentially illegal for parents to deny their children what they call gender affirming care, which is actually genital mutilation and destruction of an innocent body. In Canada, they have something called the mature minor principle, and their law, which I don't know the details of fully, their laws basically allow a physician to evaluate a child for their level of maturity, and then the physician decides, not the parent, if the child is mature enough to decide whether or not to attempt to change their gender, which we all know cannot be done. It's just an act of mutilation of their own body. And in Canada, they can intervene, the state can intervene if children's gender is not affirmed by the parent. They can then intervene with Child Protective Services and begin the process of removing the child from the home and deeming it neglect. There was actually a family that was looking into moving into one of my rental properties, and it was a family from Canada, very conservative family, very pro-Trump, very God-versed, and her children were in the school system up there, and she actually had a child that was indoctrinated somewhat from peers and teachers, and one of the reasons she was frantically trying to get her kids out of Canada and begin their process in the US is to get them out of the school system there, because they began to intervene and call Child Protective Services on them because they were not encouraging their child down the road of changing their gender, and I think the kid was maybe 12 years old. The motive behind the transgender movement from a spiritual standpoint is, we know from scripture that Satan comes to rob, steal, and destroy. That's what he does. He comes to rob joy, he comes to rob legacy, he comes to destroy bodies, he comes to destroy health, he comes to destroy relationships. And that's just in alignment with anything that's demonic, that's from Satan. And so the wholesome purity is something that he's after, yes. The body is something that he's after. But first and foremost, what he's after is identity. And a lot of people suffer from a lack of understanding their identity. The recipe for living a life of abundance and joy really requires an understanding of your true identity. And any identity that is dubbed on you can be taken from you, except being a child of Christ King, being a child of God, being a follower of Christ. That can never be taken away. Someone can kill you, torture you, smear your name, take your job, but that can never be taken from you. And one of Satan's favorite tricks is to get people to cling on to identities that they then are enslaved to. Prime examples, when people are told to start off claiming that they're an alcoholic because they struggle with trying to, tune out the pain, and that's the substance that they tend to turn to. Or calling someone a whore because of what they've done at certain times in their life or in their past, before they knew who they were, before they knew that they were seen as pure in God's eyes and that Christ died in order for them to live and walk in that identity, and that it's never too late to do that. But when people absorb those labels upon themselves and accept them, it's really hard for them to ever change that behavior of drinking heavily or promiscuity or other destructive behaviors. The transgender movement uses the same template. You were born in the wrong body. Even the homosexual movement, if you will, it tells people you found yourself drawn to or attracted or enjoying validation from someone of the same sex. Oh, you must be gay. And that's a lie from Satan. And so then people believe that, and then it can be reinforced by other people or traumatic experiences that people experience when they're younger, and then they just believe, well, that's a part of who I am, and so that's who I'm going to always be, and that's how I'm going to always behave, as opposed to that's something that happened, that's something that I did, and then deciding that that doesn't align with God's will for my life and what's best for me. So it's not who I am, and I'm going to continue walking in what my identity truly is, which is a child of the highest King, a child of God, pure and righteous and forgiven and obedient and holy. And we're not perfect, we're never going to be, but we can, even when we fall and trip into whatever vice or mistake it is, we have the privilege to get back up and say, Christ died so that I could walk in purity. He died so I could start over every time I mess up. And with the transgender movement, unlike alcohol or other things that cause destruction, once someone's body is mutilated and they've taken hormone blockers or hormone therapies, or they've been castrated, or they've had their breasts removed, those can never be restored physically. And Big Pharma benefits from having them on these medications for the rest of their life, because they're never going to be able to function outside of the medical community alone again. They're going to need the care of a doctor, they're going to need medications, they're going to be completely dependent on that to keep them alive and as healthy as they possibly could be for the rest of their lives. You can never go back. So somebody can be 8 years old and overhear somebody say, you know what, you look really pretty in that dress, you must be a girl. And then that plants a seed, maybe in a fragile time in that child's life. They begin to go through that process, and then they get older and they find the Lord, and then they understand that they've destroyed their body and that's not who they are. Or they don't find the Lord and they realize that they're not happy and they're just going down a horrible path of destruction, and they can't go back, and the damage is already so vast. It's so demonic, it's so destructive, it's so tragic. So affirming gender identity is abuse, it is evil, it is vile. Any adult who is encouraging a child or affirming the fact that God made a mistake in creating them is doing the work of Satan, is destroying that child's life, is actively engaging in destruction and murder. And it's reprehensible and it's morally wrong, whether it's a child or it's a fellow adult that's struggling with those thoughts. We should always be pointing people to, you are made perfect in the image of God. There's no flaw in you that's scripture-based.